Well, welcome officially to the Reframe and Refresh Examining Labor Movements Then and Now. We are thrilled to be with you today, and on behalf of New Day Films, we want to welcome everybody into this room. We have a fantastic lineup of panelists that you're going to be meeting, as well as our moderator, Pam Sporn, who'll do the official introductions for our panelists. Our panelists, Yael Bridge, director of When We Fight, Adrian Prawica, director of Haymarket, and Dr. Kendrick Roberson, assistant professor at Pepperdine and guest lecturer at UCLA, is here. And as mentioned, I'll be turning over the moderating duties to Pam Sporn, director of Detroit 48202 and with the trope of the Chaveta. My name is Larissa Lamb. I am on the steering committee of New Day Films as the marketing lead. I am an Asian female with black hair, with a pink and black sweater, sitting in front of an orange and yellow background that says Reframe and Refresh New Day Films, with a poster of my film, Far East Deep South, which is about the early Chinese in Mississippi during segregation and the Chinese Exclusion Act. And actually labor plays a big part of it, because a little known fact is that Chinese labor were brought in after the emancipation to replace the enslaved labor on the plantations. And so the next wave were the Chinese and subsequently the Mexicans. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm very, very grateful for all of you who have just joined us today. We know that you all have busy schedules, but this is a really nice time for all of us in the education community, the library community, the filmmaking community to kind of gather together. Reframe and Refresh is a monthly series for our community to have refreshing conversations and reframe our perspectives. Want to set the table for the conversation today. Please keep yourself muted. We will have time for Q&A towards the end of our session, so please utilize the chat box for questions as you think of them. Feel free to enter that. Be courteous in our chat box. We want to create this positive and affirming environment. And today's discussion is not meant to be an exhaustive one about the labor movement in the United States or abroad. In the limited time we have, we hope to catalyze more conversation and spur more learning beyond today. So without further ado, let me introduce your moderator for this discussion. Pam Sporn is a Bronx documentary filmmaker, educator, and activist who learned to make documentary films alongside her students at Satellite Academy High School in the late 1980s. She contributed substantially to the growth of the youth media movement at Education Video Center, among others. Pam holds an MFA in Integrated Media Arts from Hunter College. She has taught in the film and media departments of Hunter and Brooklyn and more. Her 2018 film, Detroit 48202, Conversations Along a Postal Route, was broadcast nationally on PBS World Channel's America Reframed. And prior work includes documentaries Cuban Roots, Bronx Stories, and With the Stroke of the Chaveta. She is a four-time winner of the Bronx Council on the Arts Brio Award. Making the Impossible Possible, the story of Puerto Rican studies in Brooklyn College, is Pam's latest documentary, which she co-directed with Tammy Gold. Please welcome Pam Sporn.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this latest edition of Reframe and Refresh. It's so good to see everybody. And I will just start by saying red is one of my favorite colors. And for this conversation, I was really thrilled to see this red thread going from the title of Haymarket to the red t-shirts of the LA teachers that you'll see in When We Fight. So, myself, I am a light-skinned woman with brown hair, need a haircut, and I have a white streak in the front. I wear glasses that are purple and orange, and I also have the Reframe and Refresh background behind me. I'm going to start by introducing Yael Bridge, who is an Emmy-nominated documentary filmmaker. Along with Yoni Goliev, she co-directed When We Fight. Her directorial feature debut, The Big Scary S Word, premiered on Hulu in 2022. Previously, she produced Left on Purpose, as well as the Netflix original film Saving Capitalism, starring former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, which was nominated for an Emmy Award. She served as head of production at Inequality Media, where her viral videos tackling complex political issues have gained over 500 million views. Yael was included in Doc NYC's 40 under 40 list of 2021 and was a 2022 resident of the Jewish Film Institute. She's the co-president of the Documentary Producers Alliance and serves as chair of their labor committee. She holds an MFA in documentary film and video from Stanford University and a master's in media studies from the New School. We're now going to see the trailer for When We Fight, which chronicles the 2019 LA teachers' strike.
We're standing up and we're gonna fight.
Rain or shine, we will be out here.
What are we asking for? Smaller class sizes, fair pay raise, more nurses, counselors, psychologists, librarians.
We cannot go back.
I know you're not looking for the best interests of our schools and our teachers and our students.
When we act collectively, we win.
We want to bring the district to its knees to give you everything you deserve. We're fighting for the future of our schools.
I want my teachers back.
This isn't a moment. This is a movement. We will keep fighting, but for right now, we are going to celebrate.
Thank you, thank you. You know, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, which is such a labor town. And I remember when I was in 12th grade, our teachers went on strike. And it was a natural thing for us students to go out on strike with them. So I really appreciated this film, and we'll talk more about it in a minute. I'd like to introduce now Adrian Prawica, who is an award-winning cinematographer, director, video producer, and editor. He's based in Chicago. Adrian's work in advertising, long-form documentary, and motorsports has been seen on major television networks in the United States and abroad by millions of viewers. Most notably, the 2018 WeatherTech Super Bowl commercial, coverage of IMSA sports car series, as well as multiple documentary films on PBS and more. Adrian specializes in product advertising, cinematography, and documentary work. He is a certified Phantom high-speed camera operator, as well as works with both ARRI and RED cameras. And so now we will see the trailer for Haymarket, the Bomb, the Anarchists, the Labor Struggle, about the Haymarket tragedy of 1886.
It's a very violent anti-labor history.
A peaceful workers' rally that turned violent, and a trial of the century that echoed around the world and ended with an execution of presumably innocent men. A defining event in the struggle of working people during the American Gilded Age. Haymarket.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, as I said, I like the color red, and I have to say I've been going to May Day marches for a good part of my life, so I appreciated this film Haymarket, as May Day, of course, has its origins in this historical moment. So now I'd like to bring on and welcome Dr. Kendrick Roberson, who is a visiting lecturer at UCLA, where he teaches Black labor activism, as well as an assistant professor at Pepperdine University, where he teaches courses around American politics, as well as race and ethnic politics. In 2019, he was elected to be the chair of the City of Carson's only rent control board, ensuring that residents are not treated unfairly. In 2020, he was elected to represent the over 100,000 federal employees across the nation who are under the age of 40 as the chair of the American Federation of Employees National Young Committee. In 2021, Dr. Roberson also became chair of the Los Angeles Black Labor Table. Finally, in 2021, he successfully spearheaded the campaign to create AFGE's first Black constituency group in history, and now serves as the co-chair of that national constituency group. Through his various positions and activism, Dr. Roberson is driven to eradicate workplace bullying, mistreatment, racism, sexism, and profiling. So welcome, Dr. Roberson. I'd like to start with throwing out a question for Adrian. Maybe you can tell us why you decided to make a film about an event in labor history that took place over 100 years ago.
Yes, of course. I would just like to say thank you for joining and for allowing me to be here, and for everybody that's participating. Just incredible work there with everybody. So it's great to be here talking with everyone. Haymarket certainly is an event that happened a long time ago, but it's a very central event, I think, in labor history, in American labor history. Way more widely known internationally than nationally. Certainly was quite surprising to me that it happened in Chicago, because I never expected that such huge political and social changes in the early part of the 20th century would be affected by a couple of blocks in the city that have been long forgotten and really didn't have much recognition. I think the movie is quite relative, not just from the perspective of fighting people and people fighting for their rights, but also relative today. In fact, I almost feel like it's being played out in the courthouse right now, with some of the indictments that are happening politically as compared to what was going on back then. Certainly, it's a film that's exploring a lot of archival material, which I found was quite challenging, yet I really kind of loved digging into some of these old articles and having a chance to discover some of these historical elements that really aren't displayed. So there was a lot of this discovery that was exciting to me. The history was just fascinating. There's so many unique aspects of this story. I was just kind of trying to see if I can put some of it together and create a little bit of a cohesive film that could explain not just the event itself, but a little bit of the history behind it, so that it could be understood maybe with a little bit more depth than what's available currently.
Dr. Roberson, you're a scholar in addition to a labor activist, and so I wonder what some of your thoughts are about why learning and understanding about what happened at Haymarket is relevant to today.
First off, I really enjoyed watching the film, right? And I believe both of the films are extremely useful for separate reasons. Haymarket provides several key points to the continuing struggle of the labor movement. So, for example, at the top level, the film shows that workers have been fighting for fair wages for literally centuries. Right, they've been fighting for fair wages for centuries. The idea that someone working a full-time job would or should be able to take care of their family has consistently been framed as a radical idea that's proffered by anarchists and socialists and communists, when in reality, the idea comes from the working class realizing that they have the power together and that they deserve to be paid better if the employees are bringing in these tremendous amounts of money for their employers. And so we're not talking about a situation where employers were low on profits and these workers were demanding higher pay, right? On the contrary, when businesses struggle, unions often put their worker interest on the back burner in order to promote the continuation of the companies, of the employers. And so we're talking about a situation where profits are coming in heavy, and you've got workers who are continuously underpaid. Haymarket also touches on a topic that I think is very important for workers today, like extremely important, which is the chilling effect. This film highlights the chilling effect. The chilling effect is basically this retaliatory scheme put forth by employers. It's when a worker or workers, when they engage in union activity that would advance worker protections, the employers might retaliate against that person, whether that be fire them or whether that be bring an entire police force against them, right? And Haymarket highlights this through the use of actual violence, or the coverage of actual violence. And it's imperative that people know that's about some of these strategies that employers will use to combat organizations of workers that are designed to increase worker power. And the idea that they might actually retaliate against one person to say, hey, look at what happened to this person when they started organizing. You don't want this to happen to you. So don't be like them. Go ahead and make sure that the power remains with us. And so just being able to see that is very important for, I think, workers that are trying to figure out their organizing strategies right now.
Yeah. Switching to the filmmaking part of it, Adrian, you tell the story of the fight for the 8-hour day and the Haymarket martyrs through a combination of historian testimonies and these rich archival materials. Why was this your choice of storytelling technique?
Well, I think a lot of it was that there weren't really many other options out there to tell this story with authentic media. Video didn't exist. Film didn't exist at that time. Newspapers didn't really have any photographs. Back then, most newspapers were either just text or maybe some drawings. That was new technology. Photography in newspapers was just coming out. It was expensive. And I've looked into other ways of telling it, things like CGI or some more advanced reenactments, but it was just losing its authenticity. I really wanted to show some of these historical documents that no one sees. In fact, Pam, I spent some time at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and that's really where they have just incredible archives of these labor historians that collect and have all these different collections. And I was able to go in there and really discover and see some of this history that I've never seen anywhere online or anywhere in some of the public archives that are available. So just seeing that story and reading the articles and just the day-to-day struggles of a newspaper, it's a little different, I guess, when you read or when you watch a overview or just someone talking about, the topic. But when you actually read the articles from that day, like what was going on the Monday before, what was going on during the railroad strikes, and what were some of the headlines, what were some of the people worried about, it really kind of takes you into that story, and you're kind of living it as the people that were reading it. And I really wanted to show some of these newspapers and drawings and cartoons and things like that, and sketches, a lot of sketching, so that you would see it from the perspective that maybe the people saw it back then. And with media not being available for quite some time, that was pretty much all they had. Another purpose for that was, of course, that it was created with the intention of going on mediums like PBS or educational organizations. And for that, there are certainly some requirements. This was my third film, I believe, that I was working with with WTTW and other organizations. And I just wanted to make sure that we have enough of the elements that satisfied the criteria so that we can get it wider distribution. And we didn't want to end up being at the editing table and then having to do a lot of readjustments on the back end because of that. So that was some of the driving force behind that, the look and the feel of the movie. And music was a big fact. I really loved the music and just creating the story with a lot of the drama behind it and the sound effects and everything else. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love archival material, and I've used it both in my filmmaking, but also many years teaching high school history. And I think that the archival material offers such an opportunity for students to dig in and interrogate and explore I think the archival kind of opens a door to history, but opens a door to all kinds of new ideas. You did it really beautifully. I'd love to turn to Yael and talk about your really thrilling film. It's so exciting, as Dr. Roberson said. There's this like upsurge of union organizing, and teachers have certainly been like right there. Two things stand out to me about your approach to telling the story of the 2019 LA teachers strike. One, the verite style with no talking heads, and also the 5-part structure. And I wondered, why did you choose that approach to telling this story?
Yeah, great questions. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is such a great panel and a super conversation. I was so excited to be paired with Haymarket. So this is great. I made this film with my filmmaking partner, Yoni. I have been filming labor issues for a decade or so, I think, at that point, and had just been filming a bunch with teachers during the Red State revolt of the year before. So I'd been filming in Oakland, where I lived, and was in Oklahoma as well, and was so sort of in the zeitgeist, excited to be able to make something that was just focused on teachers and not part of a larger conversation. And then the reason that we chose verite, I think one was just creative. I had just come off of making The Big Scary S Word, which is a history of socialism in the United States. And that had everything. So we had a lot of archival, we had a lot of talking heads, we had verite, we had animation. It was expensive and complicated and just sort of a lot. And I wanted to do something creatively that was just going to be a little cleaner. We didn't want to have talking heads, and we also didn't lower third anyone. We didn't give anyone their role or like who they were, what their role was in the union, or not in the union, as it were, because it really is a movement that it was just a collection of people. That's sort of how power, I think, has always worked most successfully, is when it's not someone from the top coming down. It wasn't about the union president specifically. It was also about the students and about teachers that are in the union, or those in leadership and parent groups. Really was the whole community coming together to support teachers and their working conditions and the classroom conditions. And so wanting to highlight that by not distracting the viewer by saying like, oh, well, that is the vice president, or this is a librarian. And so, it's like everyone is working together, and how to really emphasize that within the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really appreciated how you highlighted the voices of parents and students and teachers, and made the point that, or let the teachers make the point that what they were fighting for was not solely higher wages, which they certainly deserve, but had to do with classroom size and conditions and needs of the students and their families. I think that's really great. I also noticed the leadership role of women, both among the teachers and the community members, that they played in the strike, and also the multiracial character of the participants. And so I wondered, was this something that you intentionally sought out, or was this revealed? There was this dynamic revealed to you as you covered the story?
I think it's a combination of both. Certainly LA is incredibly diverse, compared to other strikes that I was filming. You go to the Capitol in Oklahoma when they were striking, and it felt more homogenous than what you would be seeing in LA. And also it felt important to use the voices of the people that we were, how to say this? I guess like we didn't film with the president. We weren't trying to film from like who was and still is, but he's not the president anymore. It was a white man looking to like who is around, who are the people in all of these other positions. And so both.
For both Yael and Adrian, how has your film been used in classrooms or union meetings or community settings so far? And do you have supplementary materials or viewing guides that are designed to help facilitate discussions during and after screening. So maybe Adrian, you could address that, and then Yael.
Sure. So the film initially went and premiered on local PBS, and then the idea was to try to bring it to a larger audience through the educational outreach. So I think PBS is a great outlet for us to kind of get things moving. But honestly, what helped the film kind of get its ground and kind of move is really organizations. So there's a lot of outreach to different types of organizations that might be interested. And quite honestly, it didn't start in Chicago. At first, I was very excited about bringing a film to Chicago that is about this a particular part of history. But of course, that history is a little controversial here. But I did reach out and get in contact with New York, and got a tremendous amount of support from New York, which was exciting and surprising. And we did a series of screenings, which it was COVID at that time, and the shutdown was happening. So we were able to, I guess, take advantage of the virtual acceptance at that time that was really big. And we're able to just do a ton of screenings that really drew people and kind of gave a little bit more of a grassroots following. And sooner than we thought, I guess, requests started coming in and people started requesting the film at different places. And that kind of gave us a launch pad to introduce this movie into not just PBS, but also organizations, libraries, universities, and of course, New Day, being the great avenue that it is to have this outreach for educational use. And it's just great to be a part of that. And we do have a study guide that's available with the film that kind of talks about some of the main points that's available. And the film does have 2 different formats. Initially it was like a 2.5-hour film, but that's pretty heavy for a historical film. I'm going to say that after watching it myself, I felt like it was a little much. So we did trim it down a little bit to kind of make it also more classroom friendly. But other than that, we're just thrilled to share this story, which is, it's just a fantastic story of labor and struggle. And really the answer to the question that I maybe have had of in advertising and motorsports and just products and a lot of the capitalistic things that make America America. And hearing this question of, are we simply born to work and die, really kind of flipped the script on me, I'm going to say. And this film kind of really helped me re-understand a lot of things that maybe I was not aware of before. So, and that's kind of why I'm glad to share it.
I love how, as filmmakers and educators, we learn as we go about doing our teaching and our filmmaking. Yeah, that's really wonderful. So Yael, do you have some experiences you'd like to share about how the When We Fight has been used in classrooms or in other settings?
Yeah, we have had huge success with screening the film with different unions around the country. And so we partnered with several different unions to be able to show bulk screenings, either mostly teachers unions, to have them show with their workers in their organizing. And that's happened all over the world. I think we have screened in like 4 or 5 other countries in a bunch of their teachers unions while they're going on strike and organizing, which has been certainly beyond, I think, the scope that we had when we didn't imagine that it would be really helpful for Turkish teachers,
Wow.
But I think it's to the testament of the struggle for equality and the way that education has just been slashed across the world is unfortunately a real global phenomenon. So we've probably screened at over 100 or 200 screenings in that regard, and it has been just the feedback has been truthfully I don't know, humbling, phenomenal, inspiring, like all of the things to get teachers like sending us letters saying, oh my goodness, we showed this film. This was so great. We're not, just to get teachers to recognize a lot of it is just raising expectations, right? That's a lot of the work in organizing, is saying like, this isn't the way it has to be, right? People didn't think that they could just, we didn't always have a weekend, right? We didn't have an 8-day week. People had to fight for that. And I think people are just at the point right now in society where they're like, yeah, we really got to fight again. We got to fight harder. And to be able to get the feedback that the film is helping people be inspired, raise their expectations, realize it's not insurmountable. I think a lot of educators, and I'd be curious because I know there's some educators in the chat, like hold up Chicago and LA teachers unions as sort of this, oh, well, we're not, how many times I've heard teachers say, well, we're not Chicago, Chicago wasn't always Chicago, 15 years ago it was not Chicago. LA, they had a plan. I mean, it was a trajectory. It was bringing in a new slate. It was years before we showed up with our camera to say, hey, and we were there kind of early. We were there at the strike authorization vote, and that was still several months before they went on strike. So, I mean, almost I'm not going to get into dates because it's hairy in my brain, but anyway, I lost my thought, but yes, we have been doing really great work showing it in classrooms as well. We have a curriculum that's on our website, whenwefightmovie.com. And we've done stuff with people in the film who have been able to come, including the filmmakers or participants to come and speak with the film. And it is a breezy 30 minutes, which is perfect for educational purposes like this.
Yeah. I just wanted to let our viewers know that many of the films in our New Day catalog have viewers guides, and so that's really helpful with students. So now I'm going to pull Dr. Roberson back in and ask you two questions since we lost you for a minute. But one is, what do you think is a historical through line that connects these two films and these two movements, well, the movement that they represent? And then, yes, and then secondly, how do you think these films can be used to inform and activate workers today?
Absolutely. And first, sorry, y'all. Yeah, as we know, as activists, as filmmakers, as scholars, sometimes we got a power pivot out of nowhere for no apparent reason. So now I've got the internet from my phone, and we make it work.
All good.
But yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So Haymarket emphasized some of the young workers who were integral in the worker movement. And When We Fight showcased many young workers who were in solidarity and fighting for the rights of fair wages and better working environments and conditions. And I was looking up the numbers recently, and less than 8% of young workers under the age of 35 are a part of a union, right? And this has been a trend. And the strength of the labor force tomorrow is dependent on the strength of the young workers today. And you see, oftentimes, these young workers are entering the labor force real comfortable. They're entering the labor force real comfortable, right? They come in, they've got all these rights that other people have fought for before them, right? And they're really excited and comfortable to just have the job, right? But the unions have fought for decades to ensure, not for decades, bring it in the perspective that Haymarket provided, for centuries. Unions have worked for centuries in order to make sure that we have all of these rights and protections. As a university professor, I'll tell you from firsthand experience that they're not always teaching about unions in high schools, and they're not always teaching about unions in college. It's just the reality of the day, right? When it comes to Haymarket, right, we can see, as Adrian talked about earlier, this is an extremely important event in our history, in the history of labor, but it's more so known outside of the country than it is here in the United States, right? And that's a problem. A lot of the work that we've done has been reduced to a footnote in the history books, and that is not right. And what these films provide is a way for us to see that there is this movement that has progressed and has gone throughout all of American history to say, hey, if we're here working, you deserve to get a fair pay. If you're here working, you deserve to be protected. If you're here working, you deserve to be able to put food on the table for your family and have a decent living experience, right? Like, not to keep quoting Adrian, but to go back to what Adrian said earlier about, were we put on this earth just to work and die? No, we were put on this earth to live, right? And so if that's the case, then we really need to make sure that these unions are continuing to fight and that these young workers are organized. I was talking with Chris Smalls, who's one of the primary leaders of the labor movement for Amazon, right? And he always says this thing, I like to make sure I attribute it to him. He said, we need to make unions cool again, right? And I think that's what we're doing. Films like When We Fight, I think that's what it's doing. It's showing that, hey, they're asking for something so basic. A nurse in every school? A nurse? That's the fight, right? That's the fight. Smaller class sizes, right? They're asking for things that benefit society as a whole, right? And then you have companies that are more so fighting for just the rights of their workers. But even when you're fighting for just the community as a whole, you're seeing a whole lot of pushback. And so I think the through line between these two films is to show that this fight for equity, this fight for workers' rights never stops. And we have to keep pushing it forward, especially as we're entering an age where inequity is just going through the roof, right? Everything is getting more and more inequitable over time. We can see since the 70s how much income inequality between the lowest earners in these companies and the highest earners, how drastically those have grown apart. Right? And it's only through organization can we actually begin to bridge that gap, because without unions, the entities that are actually looking at all of this macro worker employment data, right? We're not going to see a closing of that gap. And so just to answer your questions bluntly, the through line is that we're going to continue to need unions, and we've got to continue to increase their power.
I think educating you're talking about that our students rarely learn about the history of unions, and with this kind of clamping down and banning of books about liberatory subjects, it's needed more and more. And just to bring up that idea of when I shared the story of my teachers going on strike, this was in the 70s, and in the city of Detroit, which is such a labor town, and because of the presence of unions and how many people's lives were involved with unions, there was no question that the students were not going to cross a picket line. That was not going to happen in Detroit in 1974. Whereas I think in other places that kind of question. So that's why I really appreciated Yael's film, where it really shows the bringing in of the students, and so yeah, it's really great. I'd also like to point out to our viewers that a lot of New Day films have cover stories of workers issues, whether they be on the job or in community and housing. So really, please feel free to peruse our wonderful website and see what other great titles we have. Yes, Dr. Roberson.
So I also want to just say to Yael that I was there. So I'm a part of AFT as well. So I'm a part of American Federation of Teachers as one of the unions I have with UCLA. But I was there at the teacher strike. And when we had the big marches and everything like that, I was actually going through my Instagram to see how far back I have the picture still on my Instagram. So it was really pleasant to see a lot of the same things that I actually saw live as they were able to march and get that victory. And then just to what you were saying, Pam, and I teach this to my classes, there's a misconception that businesses and employers, that they're not organized. It's an overwhelming misconception, right? Because since the 70s, we can actually see the exact moment it started. There is ample public documentation about it. I would advise anyone watching to go read, for example, the Lewis Powell memo, right? Who Lewis Powell was a United States Supreme Court justice, right? And he was writing with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on an entire strategy for businesses to operate the way that unions do in order to gain more power in the United States. And they talk about going into high schools and changing the textbooks, right? They talk about capturing the Supreme Court, which he then becomes a Supreme Court justice. They talk about all of these things in their plan, in this strategy, right? And so when we're talking about organizing the individuals so that we can have power within our unions, understand that there is organization happening on the other side that's not necessarily in your best interest all the time. And so in order to create a fair environment, that's part of what the organizing of workers is about, is to make sure that we have someone that can, or an entity that can make sure we're on equal terms when we enter that bargaining room.
Yeah, this is such a wonderfully rich conversation, and we're going to move to audience questions in a little bit, but I'd like to invite Larissa back on, where she's here to make some quick announcements.
I love all these observations. And Dr. Roberson, can you repeat the name of the book or the article that you just had mentioned that you recommended?
Oh, it's the Lewis Powell memo. So it's a writing it's a letter that Lewis Powell, United States Supreme Court Justice, wrote to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce with a plan, which was a plan for businesses to organize.
Excellent. For those of you who are with us, we're going to be sharing some of the links and some of these resources shared in our chat. And certainly, Dr. Roberson, if there's any other supplemental materials or readings you suggest, feel free to mention them later, or you can email us and we'll share with our audience today. Before we come back for some audience Q&A, I wanted to just make a few quick announcements. In the meantime, if you do have questions for our panelists, feel free to drop them in the chat. This panel is hosted by New Day Films, and we are grateful for being a filmmaker-run distribution company. We are a co-op consisting of over 100 active filmmakers, a luminary set of filmmakers that actually reaches about 400 over 50 years, where we are making social issue documentaries since 1971. We are democratically run, and we are committed to reflecting greater diversity, representation, and inclusion. New Day Films have been broadcast on PBS, HBO, and other media outlets, and it is with this stellar quality that these filmmakers also have won hundreds of awards, including Emmys and Oscars. New Day Films offers a variety of ways, as Pam had mentioned earlier, to stream our diverse collection of films, many of them dealing with labor studies, U.S. history, and more. You can feel free to visit newday.com to see our collection. And if you're in social media, feel free to follow us if you're not following us already. We are on Facebook, on Instagram, the platform formerly known as Twitter X. We haven't refreshed our logo yet. And we are also on LinkedIn. And we'll drop those links in the chat if you have access to the chat. And of course, we want you to continue to learn more about these two films, and they are available for educational use through newday.com. They are, I believe, also available on Canopy, When We Fight, and Haymarket. And we're so excited to have these two latest additions into our labor studies catalog. And if you are a filmmaker, I did want to tell you, and you're interested in joining New Day, we have our next info session about how to become a member of New Day and add your film into our collection on Wednesday, December 13th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We will drop a link in the chat. You can also go to our website to get that link to sign up for that Zoom info session. And I'm going to kick it back to Pam right now for some Q&A with our panels.
Great. So one question that appeared in the chat from a longtime wonderful filmmaker, Gordon Quinn, I believe that's who's asking this question. He wanted to know if the filmmakers could speak to the challenge of length, of thinking about length when we're producing our films. That a recent Cartemquin films that had school-aged kids as the primary audience, they tried to keep the length to 30 minutes. So yeah, that challenge of telling full, deep stories but in a short amount of time.
I can just jump in that was definitely a goal that we had, was wanting to make sure that it was accessible. We had a longer version and it was too much information. And we didn't want to bore anyone. We wanted it to be easy and digestible and just to hit the points hard, and leave questions open, like you don't want to be afraid of questions. You want to be able to leave things unanswered so that people can have a robust conversation afterwards. And so we did keep it to 30 minutes. And I think that leaves like a good amount of time in classrooms and also like in meetings and stuff to be able to have a good amount of conversation afterwards as well.
Yeah, with Haymarket, it was a challenge. I think the challenge was the story's so big. How do you tell it under an hour, but not lose, the authenticity of the story, but also how do you tell that story in a way that I guess it isn't just a brief overview and, a retelling of Wikipedia in some ways. And that was a struggle. I think originally the film was, I believe, 2.5 hours, and we had an extended festival version that was about 1 hour and 21 minutes. Was at that time I thought that was it. I said I can't go any less than that. It's going to take out half the movie. And then we had to go down to 57, and that was again, how do you take out another 25% of a film where you feel you already did so much to cut it down? But I think in the end, I decided to follow through with action. And I said, why don't I get right into the action and let's get right into the event rather than try to build it up. And then let's go back and retell the history behind it rather than try to lead up to it. And I thought that way I could certainly slim some things down and get it. And, today, spending so much time that I do on 6 and 30-second films that try to capture your attention before you keep scrolling, I wanted to have a piece of the film that gets your attention immediately rather than have you wait for that. And I thought that was a good way to kind of get everybody into it. There's a bomb right there at the beginning, then everybody's just kind of like, whoa, what's going on? And I felt that was a way to earn someone's patience in a way that then I could explain why that happened. And that's kind of how I dealt with it, but certainly not easy for anybody or any filmmaker, maybe.
Oh, Pam, you're muted.
They're saying my film Detroit 48202 is 82 minutes, and I had to cut it down to make it to for America Reframe. But I think sometimes if we're covering a story that's kind of a singular event, it could be easier to make it shorter. When there's more like in-depth history, it's more challenging. But what I tried to do with my viewer's guide was divide the film in sections that a teacher could use and made sense, like section by section, and then the activities involved one piece of that history. So I think there are ways that we can, kind of do both. Yael, yes.
Thanks. I realized you asked a question in the beginning to me about the 5-part structure that I had in the film. I didn't end up answering that, but I think another reason for that was to create moments where you could pause and say, oh, what just happened in this section? What just happened in this other section, to make it really clear, like this can be used as an organizing and conversation tool for classrooms and organizers alike. And also we just got a grant, me and Yoni did, from Working Films to do a follow-up film on this film. And so just instead of, as a filmmaker, sort of the struggle is real, and also trying to not bite off everything, like your film isn't going to do everything. And so it was really tempting to see, like, well, what happened after the strike? Like, we had really clear boundaries with our film. It was strike authorization vote until tentative agreement vote on the first day back in school. We didn't go earlier or later. But then the teachers did organize a lot. They had a solidarity strike just recently, which is kind of crazy and very hard to organize. And they also were really ahead of the rest of the country on COVID protections for their students during the beginning of the outbreak. And so much of that was a result of the power that they built during this 2019 strike. And we really were like struggling because it took us a few years to edit because it doesn't pay anything to edit the film. And do we want to include this? Like, is this an important part of the story? And really felt committed to having it be smaller and digestible. And so being able to visit those topics in this follow-up film, just as a way to have these be tools for change and not be so overwhelmed by the process, I think is working, but ask me in 15 years.
Great. So that's wonderful. I'm going to pass it back to Larissa. I really thank all of the panelists for this enriching conversation. Very exciting. Thanks for your participation. I'm going to turn it back over to Larissa.
I just want to thank everybody here. And I just want to give kind of a final word from each one of our panelists, like maybe one sentence, or if you want people to find out more about what you're doing, just kind of a closing sentence. Let's start with Dr. Roberson.
Yes, thanks for everybody for having me today. I'll let you know, one of the fights that I'm fighting for right now is currently the limit for discrimination cases in the United States is $300,000 if you are discriminated against in the most egregious way possible, which usually involves some kind of like sexual assault. The maximum amount of payout that you can get is $300,000. That has been that way since 1991. So effectively, you are getting payout less for today's sexual assault than in the past. We're getting worse over time because we have not updated the policy in over 30 years. And so that's one of my fights right now. So as you see that going on, please definitely support.
Well, thank you. Yael?
This was so fun. Thank you so much for inviting us. You can see more about our film at whenwefightmovie.com. If I could just also say, just tagging on to what Dr. Roberson was saying, we're seeing union popularity at an all-time high in this country, but union membership at an all-time low. And so I think the work that we are doing as filmmakers and also at New Day and as educators is being able to, how do we capitalize on that moment? People are suddenly like the stigma around union. People were saying in the chat, like make unions cool again. It's kind of happened. People are enthusiastic about unions, but what they don't have as much of is sort of a roadmap and a leadership of how to go about doing that. And I think that that's where the When We Fight film and also the Haymarket film can really come in as very helpful tools in an educational setting.
No, that's awesome. I'm a proud SAG-AFTRA member as well, so I'm glad we actually finally ended our strike. Adrian, final word.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here and sharing a little bit about the film. Certainly Haymarket.tv, but, you can check out the film on New Day and contact with any questions. I just invite you to dig into the story of Haymarket and see how that may have influence some of the events that and read about, and maybe it'll just convince you to read a little deeper about who we are as people and work and what really, the goal of life may be besides working. So thank you again, and thank you to all the panelists. You guys, it's just great to share the time with you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to Pam Sporn for doing a fantastic job moderating. If you like this panel, we're going to have more. This is an ongoing series that New Day Films hosts on a variety of topics. Our next Reframe and Refresh will come after the new year in February 2024, but we will keep you posted and be sending emails and posting on social media if you follow us there to let you know when the new Reframe and Refresh. And just a reminder, the films featured today and other films on labor movements and U.S. history are available on newday.com. And in fact, there's a special promotion going. If you purchase film license of 2 or more, you get a special discount on 10% off, and 3 or more, you get 15% off films. So take advantage of those promotions on the newday.com website. If you have any questions, feel free to also reach out to our panelists via our website. And of course, we'll be emailing a follow-up thank you as well well as a link to a recorded version for those who may have missed it. And we're excited that we are able to welcome our panelists and have this thoughtful conversation today. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and thank you again for joining us.